everyone, welcome back to the SBK Betting Podcast, another edition dedicated to jumps racing. As I see a big smile from Tom Collins. I did tease last week that maybe this weekend we're going to start focusing on the flat, but of course it is the jumps finale at Sandown and the battle for the championship, which looks all but over now for Willie Mullins. And it got a little bit interesting yesterday. Sean Bowen tried to claw back a couple for the Jockeys Championship, but I think it's going to be very difficult. So I imagine on Saturday we'll be crowning both Willie Mullins and Harry Cobden champions. But it's not just about the equine people, it is about the equine horses. And this week we've got plenty to go through over jumps, but we'll have some naps next best, and I'm sure there will be plenty from the flat that TC will just be allowed to poke in. And we've also got an SBK sponsored flat race, yes, the Vintage Crop. So we've got that, but we're going to focus on 3 jumps races. But before we do that, the podcast is in good form. We had 3 winners last week. My Nap Hamish came through. Ross's Nap Favour and Fortune, I think that was at 9-2, and an next best from TC with Economics 6-4 into odds on, pumped in by the TC followers. So I'm pleased to see that we're all informed whether it's jump or flat code. But we'll jump straight through it. And we had a bit of a debate offline about what we were going to do and if we were going to start with this race, because at entry stage, the Oaksey Chase, which is our first race we're going to talk about, looked like it could be quite interesting, Ross. And then it's really kind of petered away. No Ahoy Senor, which is a real disappointment. No Jungle Boogie. What are we left with?
Yeah, not a lot really. I mean, you made the point that it wasn't a great race, and it wasn't even at entry stage. You know, Ahoy Senor is short of top class. Jungle Boogie probably is as well, but they did add an element of interest, I felt. I mean, I'd be interested to see Ahoy Senor down over the railway fences. That would be interesting for starters. And Jungle Boogie tanked through the Gold Cup like a very good horse and just didn't get home, understandably. So those are the 2 that were really interesting. We're left with the usual suspects, really, aren't we? And nothing massively appeals. So we can roll through them really quickly, if you like. Real Whacker, I question whether he's quick enough for this trip. For all that he'll like the ground, all of his form is over 3 mile plus, apart from that dipper win, but that was on soft ground, and it was a nothing race as far as I'm concerned. Hitman is Hitman. He'll probably travel well. What will he find off the bridle? The answer is probably not a lot. He'll probably find a way to get beaten. I wouldn't be surprised if he trades very short in running. You wouldn't fall off your chair if he finally got a win. Al Dancer is lovely, but he's 11. Dylan Johnston can't claim his 5, which is probably a little bit of a negative. And I just wonder at 11 years of age whether he's got the speed on this decent ground. Easy Game looked moody last time. He's got cheap pieces on. He'd be the one that could just step forward massively in what he did last time. Fantastic Lady isn't going to like the ground. Strawfan Jack, absolutely love him and really like how they campaign him, but he's not this great. So I was left with Garlaw, who will like the ground. He is a sound jumper when he's ridden forward and given a chance to his fences. I fail to understand why they dropped him out in the Ryanair last time, because he looked very good prior to that in a handicap at Cheltenham when ridden prominently. I think if small field, I think he can go forward here. He's certainly got plenty of pace. He stays well. He was going to win the Sky Bet at Doncaster a couple of years back when falling at the last on good ground off a pretty lofty mark. The one concern is the yard form. He's 7%. Jamie's known for the last 14 days. That is a concern. But plenty of yards are like that. You know, I think you've struggled to find many yards whose percentage is going up at this time of year. You know, horses have done their running. They've climbed in the handicap, etc., etc. So looking back through, he'd had a couple of winners and he's had a couple go fairly close. So I wasn't overly concerned. I'd like to see him ridden forward. I probably won't part with any money, but he would be my idea of the winner.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about how great his jumping's been, really. He's a little bit inconsistent, and it's tough around those railway fences. I don't think we should labour on this race too much, and I know that TC has got lots to say, so we'll head over to him for his final thoughts. But Galore is a bit like that. Could be anyone's race, couldn't it, TC?
Yeah, I'm glad that Ross has given a full rundown of all of the runners there, because I'm not going to be starting this podcast out strong, unfortunately, Jess. I have no opinion on this race whatsoever. Didn't like it pre-Dex, even though there were some nice horses in there. Hate it now. It's almost a bad veterans chase. I know there are a couple of 8-year-olds in there, but still. I just don't trust any horse, so why would I bet in the race?
Fine, fair enough. Mic drop. I think Al Dancer, yes, he's a veteran, but why not? You know, look, he's 20-1 in a race where there's so much doubt surrounding whether they're actually, good enough or show up, or as Ross said about Easy Game, they could all just be a bit moody. But Al Dancer, you can't knock his consistency. He's a grand old soul, and maybe the ground might be a bit on the quick side for him, but he'll be up there, he'll jump well, and he deserves to be off level weights in a race like this. So I'm going to go for Al Dancer at a big prize, 20-1, and that's it for the Oaksey Chase, really. We'll move on to something a little bit more hearty. This is the Celebration Chase at 3:00, just shy of 2 miles, where we finally get to see the match which, to be honest, even if you kind of moved over from jumps racing at this stage, we have been waiting all season for John Bon versus El Fabiolo. The race that they were meant to be seen in the Clarence House was called off at Ascot. John Bon was obviously a non-runner at Cheltenham. El Fabiolo essentially didn't really turn up anyway. So now, hopefully, we see these two real stars of this division turn up and throw everything at it. And then you've got the good old Edward Stone, who looked like he just struggled a little bit in the champion chase. Editor Geet is in it, Boot Hill, Nube Negra, and Alexa Donutz, who beat John Bon back at Cheltenham earlier on in the season. So we'll go back over to Ross, because I think all jumps fans, as we know, will take great pleasure in watching this. Hopefully, if all horses turn up to the best of their ability.
Yeah, that's the one thing, isn't it? I mean, John Bon's got a 15-day turnaround from Aintree. Now, I know he did that last year, but he had a racecourse gallop at Aintree last year. Let's make no bones about it. It was an absolute gimme of a race. This year, he really had to go to the well and dig very deep. Is a slight concern, but he's proven that he can bounce back from a fairly quick turnaround. I'm adamant this is his ground. I really liked how he jumped last time. I had to go back and watch it again, because first time watching it, I thought he'd been a little bit fiddly at a few fences, but actually he fiddled one and wasn't great at the last, but he looked far more composed. I think he'd learned a little bit about himself as well last time, and I think Nico and Nicky Henson would have learned that he can actually really stick his head down. So I really like him. Al Fabiolo paid the price last time, didn't he, in the champion chase, for taking a liberty once too often. He's done it pretty much every race and got away with it, and much is made of the fact that he can get his landing gear down. And he did again at Cheltenham. He didn't fall, but he just absolutely walked through the fence and was reportedly to be sore afterwards. So they're going to have built him back up. There's not much between it, and I think Al Fabiolo has got the better engine. But Sandown isn't the place you want to go, really, having walked through a fence at Cheltenham. I could think of easier tracks to go and try and jump around than Sandown. So I won't have a bet. I'm going to watch it very much with my John Bon glasses on. I would love to see him deliver and put in a really slick round of jumping from the front, be positively ridden, and really see what Al Fabiolo is made of. I think it's between those two. Edward Stone, I think they're probably going to hold him up this time. I think they'll be a bit sore last time. They committed to making the running, and he got tired turning in and eventually ended up on the floor. Ed de Dugy, just can't see how this goes for him, because he just looks very moody these days if he can't dictate from the front, and I don't see how he does that. So John Bon, but I'm not going to have a bet, but I'll be cheering very loudly for John Bon the whole way.
He's obviously a Tingle Creek winner, so he's a winner of course and distance. But do you think that now, as he's sort of getting a bit older, he's really could be a Shishkin type, where he's starting to get further? And we saw that at Aintree, and maybe he really needed every inch of the 2.5 miles.
No, I'm not sure. I think class got him home at Aintree. I've watched it back. I was wanting to watch it back and think, oh, he could be a King George horse. And actually, I think it was his jumping and his class and grit that got the job done. I think whether that had been 2 mile 2, 2 mile 3, 2 mile 4, he would have won in the same way. And I just really don't think that ground is for him. It's going to be the first time for a long time he's going to get a nice bit of ground under him. He can jump very, very well when he gets his conditions. So I think he's a strong travelling 2-miler who stays very well. And they always say the best 2-milers have to stay.
Yeah, okay. Well, that in mind, Ross is pretty keen on John Bon. I'd have to agree for all those reasons, so I'm not going to repeat that. And I do think Nico de Boinville has been a real big asset to him and keeping him confident, keeping his mind on the job, because his tendency just to switch off and lack a bit of concentration, as we saw at Cheltenham. TC, are you willing to forgive El Fabiolo for what happened at Cheltenham last time? Because he looked pretty unflappable prior to that.
Yeah, exactly. He's a bit of a machine, El Fabiolo. Look, I don't like to see what I saw from him at Cheltenham. I don't like a horse to make numerous mistakes early in the race and then be pulled up because of such a terrible blunder past in the stands. And usually that would put me off on the next start. But this horse is just a monster. And if he does jump better, he will win this race. I'm pretty convinced. He's just a better horse than John Bon. And that's no disrespect to John Bon. He's an excellent horse too. But I just think El Fabiolo will have his measure. And what's worth pointing out here is that El Fabiolo's had such a light season. You know, he's only had 3 races. He basically hacked up on the bridle on the first 2 at Cork and Leopardstown. And then obviously the Cheltenham defeat where he really didn't get into the race. So he wouldn't have had much exertions. He would just have been sore from the incident. Providing Willie Mullins has got him spot on, which you can almost guarantee, and providing he jumps okay, which you can't guarantee, but you can't guarantee that about John Bon either. I think El Fabiolo has to be the play. Saying that, I wouldn't want to bet in the race just because the top 2 in the market, the only 2 who can actually win this race on form, in my opinion, both have jumping issues and at relatively short prices.
Yeah, okay. It's between the 2 of them, isn't it? You're either with one or the other. Hopefully, as we've all said, they both turn up and they both show that they are on song in terms of their jumping. They're ready for the fight, and they give us something that all jumps fans want to see on the final day of the season. So, John Bon for Ross and I, El Fabiolo for TC. The best betting race of the day on Saturday has to be the Bet365 Gold Cup, where we've got a good field, as we always do have. This race always throws up a bit of drama as well. We know that through the years. 20 runners are declared. And I think we've been used to seeing Willie Mullins send horses over and Irish contingents coming over in the past, but there's a couple more than maybe we'd expected. But at the declaration stage, only 2 I can see now from Willie Mullins, Knit Rocket and Manella Kakuna. Knit Rocket will be the mount with Paul Towner, Manella Kakuna, Danny Mullins. And then you've got a real good-looking feel to this. Kitty's Light, it's probably always been a long-term plan for Christian Williams to come back and defend his crown after a gallant run in the Grand National, where I think he was just outclassed in the end, but he did absolutely nothing wrong to be beaten by Iron Maximus and the lights ahead of him. Dan Skelton will be hoping that this is his final opportunity just to gain as much as he can with Le Milos. And then I says Knit Rocket's in there. 3 under through 5 was given an absolute world-class ride by Harry Cobden last time. He's got top white weight for this, but he's been weighted with. And I suppose that's the thing. I'll come to TC first and finish off with Ross with this race. There are a lot of horses who've been very busy this season when it comes to this race right at the end of the season, especially when it's a big old marathon trip. So how do you tend to look at this race and what you want to see from your selection?
Yeah, it's an interesting point for sure. I mean, everyone's going to look at Kitty's Light and remember the victory 12 months ago, and actually just his great record in the race. I mean, he finished second 3 years ago, third 2 years ago, won it last year. They're going to look at Kitty's Light and say, this horse is a banker. For what kind of race this is, a handicap chase, competitive one. They're going to want to take the short price, and they're going to hope he gets the job done. And there's every chance he will, but he's coming back off a relatively quick turnaround since the Grand National. I mean, it's not exactly the ideal prep for this, is it? I would take that a little bit tentatively. And that's not to say Kitty's Light won't win, but I just wouldn't want to be taking the price. Maybe if he drifts out to 6-1, 13-2, albeit I don't see that happening, then it would be a bet. But I would look for a more lightly raced horse in this field. And at the prices, I've got to be with Le Milos. Now, I know he's shortened up in the last couple of days since I've actually made my decision. I looked at this race, I think, on Tuesday. He was 10-1. I believe he's best price 8-1 now. He was a horse that Ross and I both like going into Cheltenham. Ran in the Potemps final. He was well backed and was sent off, I believe, favourite or maybe second favourite in that race. And he did disappoint. I think he finished 13th out of 22 or something similar to that. And he never really looked like he was going to win. However, going into Cheltenham, I liked him for the next handicap chase. And I didn't realise he was actually going to run in the Potemps final when I watched him on his prep run, if that makes sense. He shaped really well in a couple of hurdle races. And it looked like Dan Skelton was just teeing him up for a big target. We thought it was the Potemps final. Now, in hindsight, I'm thinking they were teeing him up for a proper handicap chase. And this is the perfect option for him. Don't forget, this horse won the 2022 Hennessy. Like, he's a very good chaser. Still well handicapped. He's had a light season. I like Le Milos. Dan Skelton needs to win this race for any chance in the trainer title. So I'll take another chance on Le Milos.
Yeah, okay. And think that kind of way of thinking is reflected in his price, as you say. But have to put the point to you. Kitty's Light won the Scottish National and then went on to win this, and it's probably a shorter length of time than Aintree has. Do you just think that maybe Aintree might have taken more out of him, even though it was a right bog that he won the Scottish National in?
Potentially, I don't know. This horse obviously takes his races very well, doesn't he? It's not just that he ran in the Grand National, though. He's had numerous engagement this year. He ran at Cheltenham, then he ran obviously at the Grand National, and it's just big target to big target to big target. And you know, when he won the Scottish National, had a break before it, and then it was lesser handicaps before that. So I don't know. Maybe I'm digging too deep into the form of Kitty's Light. And as I'm saying, I don't think he's definitely a horse to write off. I mean, his record in this race makes him the one to beat, but just at the prices, he's a very short price considering all the other horses in the race. I think you've got to take a stab at maybe a horse like Les Milos or Nick Roquette, who I actually thought was going to be Willie Mullins' best novice, fact file aside, coming into the year, and he just disappointed slightly. But he could easily take a big step up. This is a competitive event. I don't want to be taking 4-1 about any horse.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. 4-1 for Kitty's Light. It's actually dropped £1 for the Grand National victory, Grand National 5th. So he's now for racing 145, but it's still £5, I think it was, above what he won off last year. So still big task for a small horse, but you know, you wouldn't be too surprised, would you? Because they keep their horses so sweet out there in Wales. They just do a great job to reproduce them after these runs. So you know, we would love it, wouldn't we, if he was to win? But as I say, we're here for value, and the man for value always. And on the final day of the jump season, Ross, you've got to find it for us.
Well, I echo what TC and yourself have said. I got it down to a short list of 4, which was Kitty's Light, Les Milos, Am I Right, and Minella Kakuna. Kitty's Light, I mean, I'm not going to tip him, but I'm telling you now, if he's there going to the last, you can forget my selections. I will be yelling for Kitty's Light, Christian Williams, and Dear Betsy. But he is £5 higher than last year, and he's had an extra week to turn around from the Scottish National, than the Grand National. But I think he had a very hard race in the Grand National. There was no ounce left. Whereas actually, when he won the Scottish National last year, he, for all that he makes quite hard work of getting there, he always just seems to have a little bit left. So that just put me off, as TC said, at the price. If he drifts a little bit, maybe he will. He'd definitely have interest. Les Milos was bang on my shortlist. Was really keen on him, as TC said, at Cheltenham. But TC might be right in that maybe the Pertemps was just another run on a step to somewhere. But I struggled to see that, and I then couldn't fathom why he was beaten off a mark of 139 in the Pertemps over hurdles. Why I see him as value off 149, which is £3 higher than he won the Hennessy off. For all he'll like the ground, I think he'll stay this trip. He's got good Sandown form back when he was with Tim Vaughan. But I just couldn't quite get there. So I've gone with the 2 Irish horses. Am I Right ran a huge race at Cheltenham back in October. Was beaten 13 lengths behind Twig and Wacker Clan, who've both run well since. He was giving them a good lump of weight and the saddle slip coming down the hill. So it was a run you could definitely mark up. He's lightly raced since then, ran at Christmas at Leopardstown. The ground was a little bit too soft there for him. He's clearly very ground dependent. He's only had 10 starts in his lifetime. I think he's got a big engine. I think a mark of 142 really underestimates him. He was placed in graded races as a novice. Henry de Bromhead still rolling along really well at 21%. He gets here fresh from Christmas. He'll need the rain to stay away. And the forecast is showers. Showers is always a very horrible word because they heavy showers, they light showers. At the moment, they've been watering Sandown at the start of the week. They will be praying that those showers don't turn into heavy showers, because I think it could turn the ground very quickly. Provided it doesn't turn it soft, I think he's really interesting. He missed Cheltenham, which because of the ground, so that tells you they've really figured out he needs a sound surface. Rachel Blackmore, Henry de Bromhead, sound surface. He'll definitely stay. He was sent off favourite for the Irish National last year. Again, ran badly because the ground went soft. He's of real interest. And then the other one is Minella Kakuna for Willie Mullins, who I thought ran an absolutely massive race in the Irish National, off top weight, was beaten just 4 lengths, giving £8 to Intense Raffles, who I am convinced is a graded horse in the making. And really interesting with Minella Kakuna, he's a very strong traveller. He was a bit of a tearaway. Remember talking about him running in the Albert Bartlett last year, whether he'd actually last home because he pulled so hard. Actually finished second to the Nice Guy and then went on to finish second to the Nice Guy, who just tipped twice last year, over hurdles on a sound surface. He's not been afforded a sound surface yet over fences. So I think there's every reason to think he could have yet more to give. 26-day turnaround from a fairly heavy running the Irish National is a bit of a concern, but he's a decent enough price. I think he's around a double figure price. I think he's quite a classy horse. Could see this test suiting him, better ground suiting him. So am I right? And Manila Kakuna would be my two in a wide open race.
Yeah, I think Nick Rocket was always going to be Paul Townend's ride, but Manila Kakuna, the higher rated of the two, I think the best form in the book of all the horses here. I just worry that he won't be as effective on quicker ground. He's been really relishing the softer ground that they've had in Ireland this winter, so you would have to slightly take a little bit of a concern on that front. That as you say, you might get these heavy showers, but
I take the opposite view. I think if you look at his hurdle form, his best hurdling form was on good ground, and he's just not had chance on good ground over fences. It's
he won on
but
soft, heavy ground and Chase. Look, we'll see. Maybe he's that versatile, and potentially there's nothing to worry about that. But in that case, why is Paul Townend not on him? Danny Mullins does the job anyway if he wins the Scottish National. So don't need to argue that. That's Paul Townend's loss, I suppose. But look, Manila Kakuna, I can see all those cases for him, and he's a good price, 10-1. Thankfully, you haven't given us just the favourites, because I thought you were nearly going to give us both Kitties Light and Lamilos. I thought, Ross, come on, we asked for more of that.
I will be cheering for Kitties Light.
Yes, we know. I jest. Okay, look, this is a cracking race. I've got selection in Canondo Cueto, who hopefully will turn out to get into the Grand National next year, because he was just he just fell short. But he ran an absolute blinder to finish fourth in the 3 mile, I think it was, handicap chase, 3 mile 1 handicap chase behind Cruise Control, where I think it looked like he just didn't quite stay. So that is maybe the concern. But I think that he's got a nice profile for this. He'll have his better ground. He is a good price again at around 16-1. His form is going nicely. I was at Ludlow yesterday, saw Go On Chairs, who he beat at Aintree this time last year in a hunter chase, absolutely bolt up, not much of a race, but I just think he's graduated into this kind of level quite well. You could put a line through that run at Cheltenham, and also the race at Aintree last time was the first run after a long time, so he might just have needed it. So I think Sam and Jonathan England's horse is worth a bit of an each way bet at around 16-1. So that is the sort of main feature handicap at Sandown, and I'm just going to remind you while I've got it in my screen, the selection. So we've got Am I Right and Manila Kakuna for Ross, and TC has gone for Lamilos, and I've gone for Canondo Cueto. So that is enough for the jump racing for now, as we have got some flat action at Navan that's worth watching. We've got the listed SBK sponsored Vintage Crop Stakes. SBK have had a great time sponsoring some excellent racing over jumps, and more to come as well from that section, but sponsoring the Vintage Crop Stakes, and well decided by the sponsorship team, because they've got none other than Kyprios turning up here, and this former Ascot Gold Cup winner who's on a bit of a recovery mission. He had 2 runs last year, and I think they were really pleased with what they saw. He obviously was beaten at Ascot last time, back after a long break. And TC, will have to come to you first. Do you think he'll need it, or do you think his class will shine through in a race where I think officially on ratings, I can see that he's £9 clear of anything else?
Yeah, I think even if he needs it, he'll still win. Maybe he will. He's had 180 days off or something similar to that. But he has gone well fresh in the past. And everyone's going to look at those 2 defeats last year and think, God, this horse is a little bit disappointing, because he looked virtually unbeatable the season before. But it is worth remembering he had a bad injury. He was off for a long time. And Aidan O'Brien, when they have long layoffs and injuries, he never gets them fully tuned up first time, maybe not even second time. Yet Kyprios still ran very well on each occasion. I think this year they're going to really try to kick on with him, and hopefully it will start by winning the SBK Vintage Crop on Saturday. Look, this isn't just a one-horse race, as much as I am kind of billing it up as all about Kyprios. I mean, you've got Yashin, who won the Savile Beg on his comeback last year, so he quite clearly goes well fresh and is capable of winning a race like this. You've got Dawn Rising, who's a Royal Ascot winner and stays over 2.5 miles, so he's definitely got stamina on his side. Run for Oscar won the 2022 Cesarewitch. Postilio won the Silver Bell at Hamilton and subsequently switched to Emma Mullins. Like, this is a good race, a very good race, but Kyprios is just next level. And if he's anywhere near his best, he will just dominate. I mean, he's 8 from 12 in his career. He is kind of the flag bearer for Aidan O'Brien over longer distances and even in the older horse category. I just hope we see Kyprios something like his best in this race. It doesn't need to be A+, because, it's only his starting point of the season and he's only going to grow as he gets into more Group 1s. But still, I hope we see a really good performance so that we know that the Kyprios we know is back.
Yeah, Aidan O'Brien's got an excellent record in this race. He won this last year with Emily Dickinson, but Kyprios won it 2 years ago. And look, I think he's pretty much lucky to be alive, or at least still racing, isn't he? So they really hope that this horse can continue on, where he left off sort of a couple of seasons ago. Last year was really just getting him back to where they really felt like he could progress again. So Kyprios in the SBK Vintage Crop Stakes. Ross, anything to add to that? What do you make of his chances based on, such a difficult time of things for him and a great training performance really for Maiden to really get him back to hopefully his very best?
Yeah, I think TC summed it up neatly, so I won't waste much time. But yeah, he can not be at his best and still win this. If I was going to be offered a free bet against him, I would probably go with Postilio just because he's fit from a hurdles campaign. He'll stay this trip well. Willie Mullins could yet find more improvement in him. The one thing I would just add is I covered Epsom for Racing TV on Wednesday, I think it was, and went against Aidan O'Brien in that listed essentially Derby trial at Epsom. And his form at the time was, of his last 9 favourites, 7 had got beat. Julie, the Aidan O'Brien favourite, did get beat. I didn't find the right one to oppose it with, but he is just perhaps taking a while to get them fully up to speed. So you might want to factor that in. I wouldn't want to take a short price about Kyprios, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't want to lay him either. So I'd sit on the fence and get a splinter in my backside, I think. But Postilio, if you were looking to oppose him for me.
Yeah, 1 or 2 needing the run, but I always think some of the Aidan O'Brien horses he sends to trials at this time of the year, you've got to take them with a pinch of salt, even though albeit that horse that ran it in the Epsom Derby trial was ultimately pretty disappointing. They hope that won't be the case for City of Troy for the Guineas. More of that next week because we will have classic action on the flat for us to get our teeth into. But for now, Ross, we'll come back to you for your Nap and Next Best selections because I'm sure you've got some more you have found from this final jumps meeting at Sandown on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, final day of the jumps, so of course we're all going to nap on over the jumps, aren't we? The nap comes in the 5:20. It's the final race from Sandown, as I'll be crying into my coffee and cake. Pick Rock for Ben Pauling was only collared late on in the EBF final last time by stablemate Champagne Twist. Pick Rock was one of the first I put a line through in that EBF final. I just didn't think he'd want that soft ground. He looks a quick, free-going horse. I didn't see him lasting home, and he did last home by all bar 2 strides. He's definitely best on a sound surface. Champagne Twist was beaten next time, but I think has got reasonable excuses. This better ground will suit, and by a weird quirk of handicapping, Pick Rock is actually £2 better off with Email Andy, who's quite well fancied for this, despite finishing in front of him in that EBF final. Ben Pauling still ticking along fairly nicely. Keenan Wood's been riding really well. Picked up a few spares for the Skelton team lately. Has ridden them with good style. So Pick Rock is the nap in the 5:20, and then the next best comes in the first race of the day, and it's Cannock Park at a double figure price. So maybe in each way next best. He was really odd at Newbury last time. He pulled very hard for the early stages when trying to take a lead, which was a bit of a strange decision given that he'd been happily making the running up until then. He got into a bit of a fight with Craig Nicholls. Craig Nicholls got plenty of pelters for that on social media. But I tried to sort of justify that sometimes you're trying to teach these young novices for tomorrow or races in the future. He then compounded that problem by hanging left up the home straight. Craig Nicholls was determined to keep him straight, and it was only when he let him go left that he really ran home very strongly. Now, obviously, going to Sandown, he wouldn't want to hang left up the home straight here, but he looked very straight before that. He got stuck in the mud in the Formby at Aintree, but his third at Kelso reads really well. He was beaten just a length and a half by Django Bay. Django Bay is 146. He was getting £2, but it still looks like a solid piece of form. I think a big field and a strong pace will suit him really well. I think he'll like this better ground, and I thought he was a big price at around about 16 to 1 or so.
Okay, Cannock Park, interesting. I've got more to think about from that race a little later. But next best, Cannock Park for Ross, and then, as said, at Pit Rock, where in the 520, where I kind of had a little giggle when I saw Bad, who lives up to his name, with cheap pieces fitted for the first time in that final race, to try and aid him to try and work out how he can win, because that horse must be one of the most frustrating in training. But Ben Pauling is represented by Pit Rock in that final race on Saturday at Sandown. So thanks for that, Ross. Right, TC, we're going to make you work. Where are your Napa next best at Sandown for us, please?
Nowhere to be seen, I have to say. I'm going to disappoint both you and especially Ross, because I'm going to stick to the flat. But you know what everyone always says, stick to what you know. I do know a bit about the jumps, but I'm much better on the flat, and no one wants losers. So hopefully I've got 2 winners for you in the Napa next best section. Now, this isn't the most sexy of selections, I have to say, because my Nap does go in a 0 to 60 handicap at Leicester, the 455. Yeah, look, you've got to go down to the nuts and bolts nowadays. And it's a horse called A Up It's Jazz. Not much for a race. The level of horse that can run in here tells you that already. But A Up It's Jazz has already proven that he's got the ability to compete at higher levels. And also he's race fit after a recent spin at Thursk on testing ground. He appreciates give underfoot, and the ground currently at Leicester's pretty deep, as it always seems to be. And also he won this race last year, so he's proven that he handles the track, which quite a lot of horses surprisingly don't, especially when the ground gets testing. He's always punted, make sure you get on early. I don't know what price he'll go off. I'm anticipating he'll open up around 9 to 4, but that's just a hunch. I don't know. I think he'll probably go off a little bit shorter. If he's any bigger than 9 to 4, he should be a good bet. And my next best is on the evening card at Donny, and it's Let Life Happen in the 1 mile 4 furlong fillies handicap at 7.10. Now, this filly is one of my 7 horses to follow this year. She's a late developing type from the Sir Michael Stout stable. She ran with great promise on all 4 starts last year. She actually had the profile of a very frustrating horse if you just looked on face value, because she had second on her first 3 outings. But she was just raw. She was too far back in her races. She just needed to be put into the race. It was obviously a learning curve rather than we want to win now with her. But I like how she got the job done at Kempton on her final start. And actually that form from Kempton back in September is pretty strong. The runner-up in that race was Cracks King, who subsequently won next time and is now rated 84. The 3rd and the 4th have also won since and are now rated 90 and 80 respectively. Let Life Happen is rated 84. It's very fair. She's only going to improve. I hope she's fit, because that is a slight doubt. So Michael doesn't usually get them ready first time up in a season like this, especially in April. But if she is anything like fit, then I expect her to go very close in the 7.10 at Donny.
Okay, yeah, she's actually a half sister to our late lovely horse Far Out, so I'll have a little bit of money in that respect for her. But more interestingly, I'm quite keen to hear about one of the 7 horses to follow for the flat season. Where can we hear a bit more about that, TC?
Yeah, it was on SBK Betting Zone a few weeks ago. Like, you can still find it on my Twitter. I can't even remember half the horses. Only one has run so far, and that was High Order, who ran 16 to 1 in a very good race at Newmarket last midweek, and ran a very good 3rd, given not a great ride by Kieran Schumacher. So we've started off relatively strong. He needed the run, but he's going to be a nice 3-year-old. Hopefully this filly will get the job done, and then the other 5 will run in the near future.
Okay, right. We'll look forward to refinding that, and hopefully revisiting some of them running for us on a Saturday for that we can preview. Okay, I'll take you through quickly my selections. I've got a Nat in the 150, so I'm taking Ross on it at Sandown. I've been such a fan of Secret Squirrel all season. I think he shows a lot of speed. He jumps a hurdle really well. He showed that at Taunton last time, and I think they off a mark of 126 in this kind of race with the ground, probably, I hope, in his favour, he'll be there with a shouting. David Bass seems to get on with him really well. He has to run at Southwell on the flat, because they could not find a race for him where the ground was at essentially the optimum for him. So don't overly read into that. I think that just needed to keep him ticking over, but much more like it when he won at Taunton last time, and he's around 10 to 1 for David Bass. And it was good to see Hughie Morrison with a winner the other day, because it's been slightly quiet from a jumps perspective anyway. Okay, so that's that. And then I am keeping my eye firmly on the flat, and I was really impressed with what I saw by the Bell Conductor when he won at Pontefract last time out. That was on pretty testing ground. It was a race that none other than Live in the Dream, the subsequent Nunthorpe winner, won last year. So the Bell Conductor, I think, he's got a long way to go to prove that he's in that kind of realm. But he made all to win off top weight, and near top weight, I think it was. And he's just a horse that's clearly done well. He's now a 7-year-old, so he's been around for a good amount of time, but Craig Lister's had a good start to the season. He's up £5 in the handicap. I don't think it's a hugely competitive race. Fair few of them are having their first run of the season. And I think that the Bell Conductor, if he goes out and makes all again on his preferred ground conditions, he should be very much hard to beat. So he's my nap. Secret Squirrel is my next best. So make sure that that's the right way round. But a reminder that TC's gone for Up It's Jazz and the 455 at Leicester. Next best, Let Life Happen, the 710 at Donny. And then for Ross, he's got Pit Rock in the 520 at Sandown and Cannock Park in the 150 at Sandown. So that's it. That's all of our selections. A good rattle through, quite a lot of racing that's coming up this Saturday. So enjoy it, whether you're a jumps or a flat fan, but we will certainly have all focus on the flat. We've got the first classics of the year this time next week at Newmarket. So make sure to tune into that. And Ross will get his dust out his flat form books, and I'm sure we'll be looking forward to that indeed. But don't forget, all new SBK users get £30 in free bets when you sign up and you bet £10 for the first time. Head to SBK for lots of other offers and promotions throughout the weekend. I'm going to go off and have a look at TC's Twitter and find his horses to follow for the year. But we will see you next week. Have a great weekend.